gonna show you how to do the question 3 of the Exemplar question paper of 2018. First off, you should read through the whole question 3, and then you can start attempt to answer some of the questions. If we look at the data that is provided, you will notice that there is two different units. It's the main unit and then the extra unit for the class. Okay, so the first one is for the main unit with the GUI. Second part is the additional unit for the class. This is where you are going to work on your class. Usually they only ask you to write a few methods for your class, to add a few methods to the class. Okay, so the first part, 3.1, right through 3.1.1 to 3.1.5, we will be coding in the class unit. Okay, so the first part of the question will be in the class unit only. When we move to question 3.2, we will be coding in the main unit. Okay, so the first part of the question 3.1 is usually in the class unit, and then question 3.2 we move over, and then we will be working in the main unit. In the class unit we will be creating new methods. Methods is functions and procedures. In the question paper they are not going to tell you just to write a procedure or function. They're going to say you must write a method, and then there will be some tips there to help you to know, so that you can know whether it should be a function or a procedure. In the second part of the question 3.2, you will be basically calling all those methods that you created in the class unit. So you must make sure that in question 3.2 you must call all the methods that is available in this class unit. Okay, remember they will not ask you to write a method and not use that method. So make sure that when there's a method in here, that you actually call it somewhere in your program. Okay, sometimes it can also be that one method will call another method, especially when that method is under the private. If that method is under the private, that method can only be called by one of the public methods. Okay, so I'm just gonna make some comments over here to quickly tell you what's the three different type of methods that we can get. First one is accessor. Okay, the accessor is used just to go fetch values for us. Okay, because those properties or those fields are under the private, we need a method to go and fetch those values for us. And when we are fetching values, we must return a value. So accessor will always be a function. Keywords for a accessor. Another tip that you can look at is the word get. Soon as there's a method with the name get, it most probably will be an accessor. Okay, second one is a mutator. Okay, a mutator is a method that will change values, change some of the fields in here. Okay, so as soon as that method changes values of the fields in our class, that method will be a mutator method. Okay, and a mutator method is usually a procedure. Okay, procedure. Keywords of a mutator is usually words like set values. Okay, set values, because then it's going to set a specific value. That means it's going to change the field, and that makes it a mutator. Last one, auxiliary method. Okay, auxiliary method is a method that's going to use some of these fields to calculate something new. Okay, to calculate something new, and then it will send that new value that was calculated back. So it's sending a result back. As soon as it's sending something back, it's a function. So the auxiliary method will be a function. Keywords to look at over there is words like calculate or determine a new value or even test something. Okay, so if you test something, it's going to send back a Boolean variable saying yes, it's fine, or no, it's not fine, true or false. Okay, so there's three keywords there: calculate, determine, and test. Okay, so maybe if you go into the exam, you can memorize these things. You can type it in as comments there to make it easier for yourself. And as we read through the question paper, we can refer back to this, check whether we can spot some of the tips like set or get or calculate, and then we will know what type of method we need to use. Okay, now I'm going to look at question 3.1.1. They say here, write an accessor method called getEmail for the email attribute. So they say it's an accessor. Let's look at our notes. Accessor, that means it must be a function. Okay, it must be a function. Another thing is the method name is getEmail. Get also tells me it's a function, so it's an accessor method. And it wants us to return a value. It wants us to return the fEmail attribute. Remember, these fields cannot be accessed directly. You must use methods to go fetch them and then send them back. Okay, so I'm going to write a function. Oops. Function name is getEmail. GetEmail. And it's going to return a value. Remember, functions are returning values. For example, this function toString is going to send back a string. They want us to send back the fEmail attribute. So fEmail is a string, so this one will also send back a string value. Okay, so you can check over here, fEmail is a string, and we want to send back that fEmail, so it must be a string return type. Okay, so Control Shift C to auto complete your function. And when you make a function, you know that there's always going to be a result. So make sure you send something back. Even if you can't answer the question, make sure that you are always sending some value back. And you can also make sure that you send the correct date value of the correct data type back. Okay, so we want to send back fEmail over here. Okay, so next one, write a mutator method called setApproved to receive a Boolean value true or false as a parameter. Okay, as soon as we hear the word parameter, we know that there's going to be something inside the brackets of our method. Okay, so parameter tells us that there must be something in the brackets. Okay, write a mutator method called setApproved to receive a Boolean value, true or false, as a parameter and assign the received value to the fApproved attribute. Okay, they tell us it's a mutator. Let's look at our notes. Mutator is a procedure. Set is a keyword, also telling us it's a procedure. So we need to write a procedure for this one. So under public, I'm going to say procedure. The name of the procedure should be setApproved. Okay. We saw something about parameters, so we know there's something that should be inside a bracket. We must receive a Boolean value. Okay, a Boolean value, and it will be assigned to the fApproved attribute. Okay, so we need to make space for a Boolean variable. I'm going to make it easier here. I'm going to copy the if approved, and then I'm going to change it to be approved, and it needs to be a Boolean. They said it must be a Boolean, and the if approved is also a Boolean because we need to assign this parameter to this field over here. So we will probably be receiving this Boolean variable value somewhere from this form over here. Okay. Let's go here. It's a procedure, so it's not going to send the value back. Control Shift C to autocomplete, and they said we should assign that new value to the field if approved, or the attribute if approved. So we're going to copy that one. If approved is equals to the new value over here, be approved. Okay, the next one. Write a private method called test email that can be used to test the validity of the supplied email address. The test email method must receive the email address as a parameter. Tells us there must be something inside the brackets, and return a Boolean value. So this method is returning something, so it's probably going to be a function. Return a Boolean value, true or false, based on the following test. The address may only start with the letter from the alphabet, uppercase or lowercase, with no other character or digit. Okay, so they say it is a private method, which is not very common, but when it's a private method, we must code it under the private and not under public. So we will be coding this one under private. They say the name of the method is test email. If I go back to my note here, the keyword test also tells me it's an auxiliary, so it's going to be a function, and it's actually returning a value. So when it's returning a value, that means it's going to be a function. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to say function, and the name of the function is test email. It's a function, so it needs to send the value back. So let's have a look. Return a Boolean value. So the return type will be Boolean. Control Shift C. Wait. Test email method must receive an email address as a parameter. So that means that we need to have something in the brackets. It must receive an email address as a parameter, and the data type of an email address will be a string. So I'm gonna put my brackets here, is email, and I'm gonna make it a string data type. Okay, email string, put the cursor behind the semicolon, then Control Shift C to autocomplete. Now the rest of this coding over here is not really OOP based, so you still need to know some basic coding to be able to do some of the methods inside the OOP equation. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to make a variable, local variables, be pass, and I'm going to set that to true. Oops, first I need to declare it, and when this method starts off, I'm going to say be pass equals true, and then I'm going to say if. There's obviously a variety of ways that you can do this. I'm going to check this whole email. to an uppercase, but I only want to test the first character. And if it's anything from an A to a Z, if it's not anything from an A to a Z after I made it uppercase, then I know it's not starting with the correct character, and then I'm gonna say bParse equals false. So that means I want to send back a false value. So I'm going to start, I set it to true. If I find a mistake, I'm going to change it to false, and then I will send back a false or true value. Okay, so remember that it's a function, so it must send back a value. So it will have a result. Then you can check what's the return type. It's a boolean, and I know I must send back the bParse whether that email is legit or not. So I will be sending back bParse in there. Okay, change the provided constructor method called create to use the test email method in order to test whether the email address format is valid before allocating it to the femail attribute. Okay, so I want us to change the current create constructor that we have. They want us to call the test email. Remember, the test email method or function that we created was under the private. So that means that one of the methods under the public will have to call this test email. Now we see that it's the create constructor that must call the test email method. Okay, it must call it in order to test. If the email address is invalid, the word error must be allocated to the femail attribute. So it's gonna, they must test whether it's valid or not, and then assign the value error to it. Okay, so we need to go to the constructor, create over here. So I'm going to say if, and then I'm going to call that method test email, and I need to send the value with the email address with. I'm going to call it test email, and I'm going to use that email that I received as a parameter. I'm going to check whether it's true or false. If it sends back a true value, then we can assign it to the femail field. That means there's no problem. It's true, we assign it to femail. Else we're gonna assign the value, the word error, to femail. Okay, you don't need to use the begin and end over here because it's only one line. I just like to use it because then all the learners know that if you use your begin and end, there's no confusion. Okay, and then the rest will stay the same. So we're going to call test email, take that email that we receive as a parameter, try to check whether it's legit, yes or no, send, then it will send back bpass, which is true or false. False if it's not legit, true if everything was fine. Right. Then we move to the next question. Write a public test age method. Okay, the word test, we go to our little notes here. Test means it's an auxiliary, which will mean it's a function. Method that will receive the minimum age requirement for registration as a parameter. Again, parameter tells us that there's going to be a value inside the brackets, and determine whether a player is old enough to be registered. Determine, also telling me it's a auxiliary and then a function. Okay, whether a player is old enough to be registered, the player's age must be calculated using today's date and the player's date of birth. If a player age meets the minimum age requirements, the word approved must be returned. Okay, returned tells us it's a function because it's returning a value. If the player is too young, the word rejected must be returned. Okay, so it's a function. Function name is test age. We did see something of a parameter, the parameter here. The minimum age requirement for registration as a parameter. Okay, so we have the parameter IH is going to be an integer. It's a function, so it's going to send back a value. So let's check what's the data type of that value. Meets the minimum age requirement, the word approved must be returned. Okay, so the word approved, most suitable data type will be a string to send back that word. So it's a string. Control Shift C to autocomplete. So now I'm going to say create a new variable. Remember, even if you can't do the coding for the calculations, you still need to declare the function and return a value so that you can at least get those marks. Okay, so IH is integer. Then I'm going to say IH. And I'm going to use the function years between. There's obviously other functions that you can also use, or different methods that you can use to calculate the age. So I'm going to take the current date by using the date, and then I'm going to say str to not to int, string to date. And I'm going to use the date of birth. Okay, date of birth in there. So that's going to get the age between the two. And then I can test the age. If age is bigger or equal to, oh wait a minute, I have two variables of the same name. Let's make this one real age. Okay, so if real age is bigger or equals to the age that we received from the form. Okay, so we're probably gonna user's gonna enter something here. the function is going to be called. It's going to send that value over here, and then we can calculate the real age and check whether the real age is bigger or equals to the age that we received from the GUI or the main form. Okay, again, you don't need to begin and end, but it's a function, so I'm going to send back a value. Result is equals to, what do they want us to send back if everything is fine? The word approved. Else, so I'm removing a semicolon in front of the else. Else, I'm going to send back the word rejected. Okay, the word rejected. So if the age meets the minimum requirements, I'm sending back the value approved. Else, I'm sending the back the word rejected. Okay, so now we're done with everything in 3.1. Okay, so that means that we are done with everything in the class unit. So now we're going to go to 3.2. That means that we will be coding in the main unit from now on. Okay, so the class unit is already added to this main unit. The object variable was already declared according to tPlayer. Okay, so the object is already declared. So let's go to 3.2.1 and see what they want from us. Okay, so write code to do the following. Use the details that were entered to instantiate a new object player object. So now we need to create a new object according to the class tPlayer. So instantiate means that we need to create a new one over there. The method I would recommend you use is to copy the object and the class declaration, paste it in here, put the equal sign, remove the semicolon, and then click the dot. Then it will display all the functions or all the methods that's available for you. Okay, so they want us to create a new one, so we need to call the constructor create, and then you will see that we need a name, email, and a date of birth. So basically all of those will come from the main form where we are at the moment. Okay, so you can select that constructor create, and it will ask you for those values. Okay, so the name was in ett name.text, and the next one is edt email.text, and the last parameter that we need to give a value is edt date of birth.text. Okay, remember in the question 3.2 we will be calling all our methods that we declared in the class unit. Okay, so the first one we are calling the create method, which is a constructor. Okay, so they want us to call or to create a object player, clear the display of the reach edit, and then call the toString method. Okay, so first let's clear that reach edit. So I'm going to say ret display dot clear, and then they want us to call the toString method. Call the toString method to display the details of the object that has been instantiated in the display area. Okay, so if you want to call a method, you say the object name dot, and then it will give you all the methods that's available publicly. They want us to use the toString method, and a toString is a function, so it needs to return a value. It will send us a string value, back. So it's gonna take all the values, make it nice and neat, and send us the output back here. So the output must be displayed, and that is usually in a rich edit as well, because there's a lot of information to be displayed. So it's going to be rich edit lines dot add, and then we can add that output to the rich edit. Okay, so next one. Here's the example of the output. Okay, the user must enter the minimum age requirement in the edit box. Okay, minimum age requirement, here it is. In the edit box, use the age that was entered as an argument. Okay, that means we must give that value to that parameter to call the test age. So we're going to call test age, and we are going to give test age the value that is inside this edit box over here. Okay, so on the test age, we need to call the test age method. So we're going to say the object dot, and then I'm going to look for test age. Test age is a function, so it's going to send us a value back, and test age needs a value. It needs the age that was entered into that edit box. So I'm going to select the test age, and then I'm going to say you can get the age from edt age dot text, but he wants an integer value, so I need to convert this whole edit box to a string. See, it wants an ih must be integer, so I'm going to say str to int. And like I said, its test age is a function, and it will be returning a string value. Test age sends back the word approved or rejected, and I need to display that in my edit age result, edt age result dot txt. Okay, so it's going to call this method, it's going to give him a value, they're going to compare the two ages, so then it's going to send back rejected or approved. Okay, 3.2.3. Use the result of the age test and the content of the email attribute of the object to determine whether the player's application can be approved or not. If the age has not been approved or the email address has an error, the following message must be displayed in a message box. The player's age or email address has been rejected. Also call the correct method to ensure that the if approved status of this object is false. Okay, so we need to call a method again there. If the application meets the requirements, use the correct method to change the if approved status of the object to true. Clear and update the content in the display area and show the latest if approved status of the player object. Okay, so I'm gonna go to 3.2.3. yeah. Start off with if edt age result of text is equals to approved, and test another thing here. and now I'm gonna call the get email. Because I need to get the email method, and if that get email was assigned the error message. Okay, so I have two tests here. I need to test for approved, and it should not be an error message, or should not be error inside the email. Then begin. I'm gonna call the set approved, and I'm gonna give him the true value, because then we can approve this person. Okay, so if the age is correct and there's no problem with the email, then I can call this mutator and give him the value true. Else I'm gonna call the object dot set approved, but this time I'm gonna give him the value, the boolean value false. Okay, let's look at the question here again. Okay, they told us we must check for the if approved, and then we need to display, we need to clear everything and then display everything again to show the latest information. Okay, so I'm gonna say clear, and I'm going to call my toString method again to display all the information. So I need to display it in my reach edit again. Dot lines, dot add. Okay, so I'm gonna clear everything, and then I'm gonna display all the information again, and then we are done with this whole question 3. So question 3.1, we did all our methods, and we used these notes over here to determine what type of methods they were. I did make mention that if it's a function, you need to return a value, and even if you can't do the coding like test the email and stuff, you still need to send values back with a function. For example, the test age, even if you can't calculate the difference in the age, you still need to at least send values back. Okay, and then with question 3.2, we basically called all our methods that we coded in the class unit. How do we call a method? We call it by the object name, then a dot, and then you select the method that you want to call. If it's a function, you must assign that result back to something next to it. Okay. If it's a procedure, you can just call it and it will be executed for you.